It's great to have a special conversation today. Why do bad things happen to otherwise good people? We're going to be speaking today to a very special human being. He's one of the most optimistic, upbeat people I have ever met in my life. Your Honor, Justice Richard Bernstein of the Supreme Court of the State of Michigan. It's an honor to be speaking to you. How are you?
Oh, I am so happy to be here, and I also want to say I love the audience that we have tonight. You assembled some of the nicest people, and it's just
I'll give a big round of applause to the audience.
It's just been wonderful.
If I could ask you, if you could share your story.
Sure. I mean,
not all of it. But
okay. So I'm actually blind, and I serve on the Michigan Supreme Court. And I think that the thing that I have enjoyed the most, and why I'm so excited to be with you, is I really think that God plays a very significant role in so much of this. And what I've come to find as I've kind of gone through my experiences is that often is the case that when you have certain life experiences, like struggle, like hardship, like challenge, like difficulty, I have come to learn that those really can help to shape who you are. And sometimes the bigger the struggle, the more difficult the challenge, your life isn't really easy, but it can be incredibly fulfilling and remarkably exciting.
So just tell me briefly, where were you born? Where did you grow up? How were you raised? And this conversation is different for you because I understand you haven't had interviews with rabbis before.
No, so that's why I'm really excited about it. Well, I think just kind of in a tangential state. So I, of course, have spent my life in Michigan. And I think the thing that I'm kind of the most proud of is, as a blind person, I'm really proud of my athletics. I'm proud to say, through God's help, I was able to complete 24 marathons, and I was also able to complete a full Ironman competition. And for those people who are not familiar, an Ironman is a 2.4 mile swim, a 112 mile bike, and a 26.2 mile run. And I've really dedicated my entire life to trying to make things better for people who are disabled and for people who have come to know struggle. And that's ultimately why I spent 15 years as a litigator taking on pro bono matters, which is I never charged for legal representation. I would take the cases that nobody else would take, but I did it because I believed that I had a certain opportunity to enhance and make life better for folks. And because of my own unique understanding and appreciation of struggle, I went to law school so that I could try to improve life, especially for our veterans. So I would take on cases against the University of Michigan, which was kind of ironic because I was a professor at the time that I took on the university, but I wanted paralyzed veterans to have access to the stadium, and that case helped to set all the guidelines for commercial facilities on a national basis. I challenged the city of Detroit to create accessible transit so that the bus system could be used by everybody, and that case established national precedents that's used by transit providers all across the country. And then I also took on the airline industry because I thought it was critical that people with disabilities have the opportunity to travel and to go places. So I fought with the U.S. aviation industry, and that case has ultimately made a huge difference in aviation in terms of how you build an airport, in terms of the level of accommodations and services that air providers are required now to give to people. And it's really opened up the world for people who at one time had a hard time traveling are now part of the community. And I think the essence of it, Rabbi, is as a litigator or a university professor or as an athlete and now as a Supreme Court justice, my passion is inclusion. And I really believe that some of the struggles and some of the challenges that Hashem has chosen to give to me created that sense of passion, that sense of purpose, and that sense of mission that has ultimately given me a pretty exciting and really resilient type of a life.
So the best way to intimidate a rabbi is to talk to him about running 24 marathons. Because I lost a couple of pounds recently, but I never had the capability of even dreaming of doing what you do.
Well, you know what's interesting, Rabbi? The people ask, so why would you do 24 marathons? Why do you do an Ironman? And, just for people to understand, I want you to picture what it's like to dive into a frigid body of water. The water temperature that morning of Lake Coeur d'Alene was 55 degrees. Imagine swimming in total darkness. You don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going. You're getting kicked in the face by all of the other competitors. You try to surface, but there's people on top of you. And lastly, other swimmers become entangled and ensnared in the rope that connects you to your guide. And as they get kind of entangled in the rope, it becomes constrictive, and the rope starts taking you below the surface, making it impossible for you to breathe. And so you ask, so why in the world would you want to go through that? Why in the world do you want to put yourself in that situation? And the reason I love talking to a rabbi is because the way I see it is, it's easy to have a relationship with Hashem when life is good, when your business is doing well and your health is in a good position. But I've always come to realize that a real relationship is often defined when things are not so good, when the outcome is uncertain. And I find that doing these endurance competitions, where you have to feel tremendous pain and agony as you go through it, allows for you to have a resilience and a strength to push forward. And quite candidly, I really believe it's through that I'm able to establish my connection with Hashem.
That's incredible. You push the conversation to the direction of having a relationship with God.
Right.
And I want to ask you about your process.
Mm-hmm.
At what age did you realize you're blind?
That's an excellent question. I think what you're really getting to is the idea of when did you realize that you were different, right? When did you realize that you weren't going to be like everybody else? And I think it's the kind of thing that you come to know early on, and I think it's the kind of thing that tends to grow over time. And what's interesting is, the reason I'm so happy about doing this, I think the most difficult time for people that are different, and when you're blind, you're just different, right, is usually when you're in secondary education, right? When you're going through middle school, when you're going through high school. It's one of those things that when you're in kind of constricted environments where they're heavily structured, I think that people like me just come to realize that when you just don't fit in, when you're awkward, when you are trying to kind of find your place, when you're the only blind person in your whole community, I came to learn something significant, and I wish that someone had told me what I'm going to tell you, which is, if there's a lot of young people that are watching us today who are currently in high school, and it's just not going well, right? You're just not finding your place. The more you attempt to find your place, the harder it gets. I really want to share this, and I hope that they'll take this to heart. In certain times in life, you just have to focus on getting through it. And this is what I wish someone had told me, right? When I was going through high school and I really couldn't find my place and I really couldn't fit in, and I would wake up in the morning and just really not want to have to go to school. It just wasn't something I wanted to do. So often what happens is people tell you, okay, well, really work on trying to make new friends, really work on trying to fit in, really work on trying to be a part of the crowd. And I think that's a mistake. I think for some people, no matter what you do or how hard you work, it's just not going to happen. So I think the best approach is to tell people that are really having a hard time, look, this is how life is. It will get better once you finish. Just try to make the best of it. As hard as it is, as sad as you might be, just try to make the best of it. Try to make a few friends. Try to take from the experience what you can. But just know that this isn't going to be your whole life. And just know that however you are in high school isn't going to define who and what you're going to be. And that ultimately you have an entire world that is awaiting you upon graduation. You're going to go places, do things, and meet people that you could never even imagine or dream that you'd have an opportunity to. So sometimes the best thing to tell people is work through it. It's a certain number of years, it's a certain percentage of your life, but once you complete it, you have no idea what lies before you.
And we spoke about, was there a time where you were particularly angry at God for being blind?
So that's a great question. I get angry at God all the time. Every day, he and I go at it. And I've really come to find that I think that's okay, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with being angry. I don't think there's anything wrong with being frustrated. I don't think there's anything wrong with being disappointed. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being sad. I think that people who go through life who are happy all the time aren't real. I think that we have emotions that make us who we are. And I have found that ultimately, that as long as you can accept that it's okay to not always feel great and not always be upbeat and not always be positive, that Hashem gets that and understands and appreciates it. Because the relationship that you establish is real. It's a real relationship. There can't be any real relationship where it's good all the time, where it's praise all the time. Sometimes real is raw, and it's bitter, and it's intense, and it's rugged, and it's painful, because that's what life is. Life is raw. But I think what I have found in terms of how I try to relate to Hashem is I've spent my entire life trying to make peace with him. And that's why I have gone through the things that I have. And I think that anger and that frustration and that sadness and that disappointment dissipates over time, because as you get older and as you move through life, you come to see that you're part of something bigger. And you come to see that you're part of something grander. And you come to see that you're part of something truly meaningful. But it sometimes takes time to see how that unfolds. And then you come to realize that, wow, Hashem gave me these experiences. He replaced dreams with wisdom. But as a result, he gives you this life of mission and purpose and meaning. And I have to tell you, anger dissipates once you find meaning. And if you can understand your purpose for creation, you will have the most exhilarating, extraordinary life that you could ever possibly live.
So that leads me to my next question.
Yes.
Before we start into the Judaic subjects,
Yes.
What's your Jewish background? Like, how were you raised? And were you raised in a traditional family? Like, what's...
Sure, so I was raised conservative. We went to a wonderful synagogue called Shar Zedek, which is in Southfield, Michigan. And the reason that I think Judaism was very significant to my parents was when I was born back in 1973, and my parents were told that your child is blind, no one ever imagined the kind of life I'd have the opportunity to live, because that just wasn't how it was back then. Expectations were different. And Rabbi Groner, one of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet, came to the hospital and said to my mom, no matter what happens with your child, I will make you a promise. He will be bar mitzvahed. And that promise meant the world to my mom. And as a result, we've been with Shar Zedek for a very long time.
How were you able to celebrate your bar mitzvah?
Well, that's a great question. So the way I would celebrate my bar mitzvah is how I kind of do all of my work. I would memorize my Portia. I memorize everything. I can't read, so I would memorize it. So basically, I would learn it through internalization, and ultimately, I had memorized everything. And that's how I was able to perform and be a part of the experience and have the opportunity to be bar mitzvah. What people don't realize is that for people like myself, it is the little things in life that people take for granted that we savor. It's those small things. Like, yeah, everybody here has been bar mitzvahed. But for somebody like myself, that's a really significant thing. That's something that really matters. And I think what you learn when you have a significant disability is that you come to realize that life isn't really about big things. it's always about the small things and doing the small things. Because I think that's what gives life its essence and its purpose and its mission and its reason.
In our history, we had many great people who were blind.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac, at the end of his life, it says, "Vatichen einav mirot," that his eyesight was dimmed.
Mm-hmm.
And most commentators say that he had wrong judgment, choosing to bless the wrong son with the eternal blessings of the Jewish people. His wife, Rebecca, intercedes and pushes Jacob to take the blessings. When Jacob, right before he dies, at the end of the book of Genesis, it says that he also couldn't see. But he made the right choice by preferring to bless Ephraim over Manasseh, putting the right hand on his head. So it seems like sometimes a loss of eyesight strengthens your judgment, and sometimes it perhaps could make you have a mistaken judgment. As a judge, and as someone who's blind, what are your thoughts about that?
I think that blindness makes the best judges, without even a question. I think blindness for a judge is an outstanding quality. And the reason is, it's the idea of prejudice. What is it that creates prejudice? Prejudice means to prejudge. Vision is what leads to prejudice, because you have to be able to see to prejudge. But if you can't see someone, you're not really able to judge them based off of their appearance. I live in a totally different world from the one that you live in. I don't see people. I don't know what they look like, but I'm able to understand people and appreciate people. But most importantly, the thing that I think I'm the most grateful with, and yes, Hashem and I have a very unique and interesting relationship, but I have to say, at the end of the day, he's given me a wonderful life. I mean, he's given me a remarkable life. It doesn't mean I'm happy every day. It doesn't mean I'm upbeat every day. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that in its totality, it's been an amazing adventure that he has given me and provided me. But what's interesting about the notion of blindness, it's not just the blindness. The other thing that Hashem did that made things a little bit more complicated.
1 second.
I think it's the other thing that Hashem did that made things a little bit more intense in terms of my relationship with him and how that relationship has grown and how that relationship has been fostered over time was I had used athletics as a way to overcome my blindness. So there's a program here in New York called Achilles, and I love it because Achilles is all about giving people like myself a chance to do athletic competition. It's just an amazing thing. I never thought I could be an athlete. I never thought that was something I could ever do. But Achilles says that anyone that wants to be an athlete can do it. They team you up with a bunch of guides, and that's how I've done my 24 marathons and my full Ironman. But there was one day in Central Park, a number of years back. It was the 13th of August. It was a Monday. It was 85 and sunny. It was a perfect day. My body was in mint condition. At that point, I had done 17 marathons and a full Ironman. I had never felt better in my life. And I've memorized the loop that serves as the circumference of the park that everybody here has been on. And so I can do it without an escort or a guide. And I was walking in the pedestrian lane, and a bicyclist was going over 35 miles an hour. As we know in the park, the bikes go very fast, and they're not always, thinking about the pedestrians or paying attention to the pedestrians. And in this situation, he was going so fast that when he hit 90th and started the downhill, he couldn't control his bike, and he veered into the pedestrian lane where I was walking and struck me directly in the back. And it was a 35 mile an hour impact, and it shattered my entire body. And I spent 10 weeks at Mount Sinai. 10 weeks. This isn't rehab. This was 10 weeks of hospitalization at Mount Sinai. So when you ask about the relationship with Hashem, the pain that I felt as a result of that accident was indescribable. I was an Iron Man, and I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't do a single thing. It was unbelievable. Sleeping through the night was just an impossibility. You just wasn't even gonna happen. And I will just say that I just remember going back to what I was saying before, which was the little things were the things that you really miss. Going to restaurants, being with people, being outside. And I had to learn how to live with pain and work through this. And I'll just tell you, in life, when you're trying to connect with Hashem, in many situations, people will always say to you, oh, you're going to make a full recovery, or everything's going to be okay. That's the worst thing you can say to somebody, because for the vast majority of circumstances, things are not going to be okay, and you're not going to be all right. What you learn when you're trying to cultivate your relationship with the Creator, it's not the ability to focus on basically your recovery, but it's the ability to adapt to your new circumstance, to your new life. The power comes in finding a way to adapt to an entirely new life that you didn't want, but the one that you have. The people that thrive and the people that survive are not always the people who overcome, but they're the people who figure out a way to deal with their new circumstance. And they're not always happy about it, they're not joyous about it. They learn to accept it, work with it, and live with it. And they learn how to adjust to the life that Hashem has now chosen for them.